I always say, like, knowing what the best solution is not a useful conversation, right? It's like, what
Best
is
for
the
who?
best solution in our context for the strategy that we are, pursuing, right? And the objectives that we have. And
Yeah.
then, if you want to look at that through a quadrant, then there's like 27 quadrants for different industries and different contexts and all of that, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you might have like cultural perspectives, that there are considerations that are important. Maybe it's a language, maybe it's physical proximity that's going to unlock value, right? And so the software is only part of the equation in that partnership with the software vendor. Like there's, and potentially an SI, right? So there's all of those things to consider in your technology strategy.
Thanks so much for joining another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. For all of you today, Joël should need no introduction, but he is the founder of ProcureTech, the man who was attacked by plants in his recently home-directed video with some friends about his mission and his journey. And shout out, by the way, Joel, it takes courage to get out there and share your vision for where you're going, what you're doing, what you're working on, and what you want that to look like, and to do it with some comedy. So thank you so much, Joel, for joining us.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, and I'm happy to be here.
You know, I don't know too many people that have been attacked by plants repeatedly, but I think that idea of just, taking ourselves not too seriously, but putting it out there for what we're trying to do, right? I get to do that by talking about building the strongest supply chain, and you get to do that
Yep.
by going and helping connect people with, you were describing it as the event you always wish you had. Can you share us a little bit
Yeah.
more about what that means? Because I think this is important, and I love that you were just going and making it happen.
Yeah, and I thanks for that. Right, like yeah, we talked about it in the movie as well. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend you go check out the short film where we lay out the peer procurement newsletter's priorities for the year. But I find it's just like it's a public commitment, and then you have to execute on it, which I love. It kind of pushes you to do that. But for the event itself, it's called ProcureTech Unpacked. And essentially, yeah, as we were discussing offline, right? I know you guys are coming to present, so I'll have some questions for you about that. Yeah, essentially I designed and organized in collaboration with Connect House, essentially the event that I've always wanted to attend, but that never existed. And so, I'm a busy procurement pro. I've got deadlines, I've got projects, I've got stuff, coming
Fires
out
to put
the
out?
wazoo as
Said
everybody
no
else.
one in procurement ever?
Exactly. Exactly. Right. So, I've always wanted to, like, how can I go to an event without having to travel much, without having to spend a ton of money either, to get, as much value as possible in as quick and compact a format as possible as well. And so, that's how we designed and why we designed ProcureTech Unpacked, which is a 100% virtual event. And essentially, it's laid out on the framework that I share all the time around like how the procure tech market is structured, right? And so we've got vendors coming in to discuss spend analytics and sourcing and contract management and procure-to-pay platforms, which you guys are helping us with, intake and orchestration, supplier relationship management, and how all those pieces fit together. So it's like defining the market, but also showing you the art of the possible in each of these software categories. That's objective number one. And then the second piece is a question that I always get, which is like, what are other people in our industry doing, right? And everybody has that question. So there's a networking and breakout group portion of the event where you get linked up with the same core group of 5, 6, 7 people, all depending on our attendee list, to touch base 5 times throughout the conference, right? And make sure that you're developing a new digital procurement best friend, so to speak, right? So those are kind of the 2 things that I centered the event around. And then I've been lucky enough to have people rally around the concept, and we're, about a week and a half, 2 weeks from delivering it for the first time. So very excited.
You know what I think is amazing is there's so many people that say, I wish, right? Or I've always wanted.
Yeah.
But, I'm no secret about that never ending climb of build yourself to be strong enough to go and create the change in the world that you want to see. And that is exactly what you're doing. And so high five, my friend. This is a beautiful, beautiful thing because you are creating something. And it's a bit like that meme that we see out there, right? You see this picture of an empty gym and it's like people building with AI,
Yeah.
and then you see a picture of like a crowded like mass of people that most unless you're very much an extrovert, you don't want to be nowhere near it. And it's like people talking about AI.
Mm.
And so the difference between the people that go make something happen and the people that talk about it is worlds apart. And I just want to give you a big high five for going and making it happen, because a high quality virtual event is not easy. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of logistics, and you're pulling it off. But you're listening to what people are asking for, and you're listening to what they are not saying. And I think there's something really important. It's very rare for somebody to go and ask for a digital procurement buddy. Like it's that, you call it that like 5 p.m. on a Friday friend where you're like, fuck, I need this thing. I need to talk this through with somebody.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a really, really powerful set of connections that I think we can't undervalue that, but it's something people tend to associate with things you can only find at an in-person conference. But you're making that happen. But you're kind of like during COVID, we had to find ways to create those connections more deliberately. You're making it happen anyway. There's something really special about that. And I want to make sure people appreciate the thought, the energy, and the spirit that goes into crafting that.
Yeah, because digital event, it's like intake and orchestration, which is all the rage, right? Which is like, hey, how do we take our requisitioners and like get them to where we want them to go with like the least amount of clicks and screens possible? Well,
Yeah.
it's the same thing, right? Like all of my clients always ask me, like, what are all the other people doing? Who could we talk to, etc. Right? And so, for every attendee on that attendee list, like I've asked them what their goals are, what industry they work in, etc. And then we've taken a lot of time and care into crafting the breakout groups and going like, are these people going to jive and connect together, right? And then making sure that it's configured in the platform where people log in, they get booted automatically to their breakout group, they get booted to the keynote sessions, and then they can click A or B, choose your own adventure, right? But it's very self-directed, but also very easy to just kind of get guided through the content for what you believe is relevant for you at that point in time.
That's awesome. You know what's cool about that is some vendors are, I am only in this category, right? I only do invoice automation, or I only do intake and orchestration or something. And then for vendors like us that do invoice automation and orchestration and source to pay, like it's harder to kind of fit into a bucket, right? And I think that's one of those really fun opportunities to make that a conversation, right? Some vendors are clearly suites, and some vendors are clearly, niche product, right? Like there's I do invoice automation, or I do intake, right? Or, and then there's some that are a little in between.
Yeah.
So the categorization is sometimes tricky. And the what problem are you solving? Well, it tends to be a procurement problem. And then there's the problem of the day. And then there's the next 10 problems that they are going to want to solve. That in concert with the number of people that want to go and roll their own these days. Like vibe coding yourself a procurement platform right now is a terrifying idea. I think if we really get into the security requirements that enterprise needs, what sort of advice do you have for an attendee that's trying to navigate that?
Yeah, and I think it's, that's been the challenge of my career, right? Is like humans need categories to make sense of the world, right? And so how do we give them a framework that's useful, but that's not too constraining? And so, the ProcureTech market map that I always put out and kind of hang all of the content on is that, right? But it's also modular in the sense where, I always talk about the fact that, yes, especially like in the context of our conference, you may be coming to speak about sourcing solutions, or for you guys end-to-end platforms, right? But you're strong on certain areas, weak on other areas. But to me, it's more about giving people that lens, that framework to navigate the market, so to speak, right? And to understand the different components of it. And then it's more looking inward and saying like, what do I need, right? Where is the value I need to unlock in my business? And let me find a partner, through that lens that we could speak a common language and get to solving that problem based on our spend profile, on our priorities, our strategy. So I think it's just, I'm really trying at the end of the day to create a common language for procurement and solution providers and everybody else in the ecosystem to collaborate on and get to what they need faster, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes so much sense. And I think that just creating the opportunity to go and talk together about it, I think is there's a community experience that comes along with it. How would you decide if you should attend if you haven't already signed up? Because I think you're almost full.
Yeah. I think we have 5 tickets left, if I'm not mistaken, right? So the reception has been tremendous. I'm not going to lie and say it was easy. Like you got to sell every ticket still, right? You got to talk to people and educate them about it. But yeah, if you want a ticket, like as I said, we took great care into crafting the breakout group. So we have a survey for people to fill out first. You could get in touch with me and fill out the survey. I think it's 10 questions just to get a sense of like, what's your role? What are you looking to learn, etc. And then great care goes into like, is this event a fit for you? Like, are you going to get something out of it? And if I don't think you're going to get much value out of it, right, whether it's the breakout group sessions or the content, then I'll be honest with you, right, and say so. That's kind of the process to get a ticket. And so we've deliberately also kept it small. So, the cap is at 60 people, not including the vendors, the moderators, the organizers. And so it's still, I think we're close to 100 people overall. It's to keep that intimate feel because I don't want a big breakout group with like 20 people where you don't have time to get to know people or, people stay quiet, don't say anything, right? So it's like trying to get the right size of groups to get that conversation going.
Yeah. 20 people isn't a breakout group. It's a presentation hall.
That's right.
Yeah, so cool. Joel, thank you so much for making this happen, for taking an idea and bringing it to life, because that's what separates folks like you and me from the folks that kind of, well, I wish it happened. Maybe next year.
And on that note, I'd love to hear more. Do you have a sneak peek of what you guys are going to be talking about?
Oh, that's pretty confidential, Joel. What I would say is what Rio has continued to grow, evolve, and so on is it really is about outcomes. And what I would also add is that the way some analysts, not you, have taken decades to go and train organizations to say, here's the category and here's a quadrant with a category leader, and you just call the few leaders and RFP it and pick one. But what started to happen is now with the capabilities of a platform, you can go and solve for so much more than that one thing. And so I think that there's who's the right partner to go on a journey to unlock an outcome. And I think that's one of the things that I believe deeply in. And I know you've had the opportunity to go and see the difference between kind of the point solution versus, which can be exactly the plug. You got a hole in the dam. Sometimes you need to just go bunk. And the sound effect, by the way, is very important. You need the sound effect. You can insert your own sound effect or have a plant fall on you. Or I keep looking over my shoulder here at my skis to make sure they're still leaning up against the right wall. I know that the way that we show up to these events, the lens that we're scanning with is so important, right? And I think the concept of who do we partner with, and some of my favorite customers that we've been able to create the most value for, we've approached that conversation as what are you trying to unlock, right? Are you trying to take your cost to operate from A to B? Are you trying to, collapse your time from PR to PO from, a week to 6 hours? Those types of things or intake to PO, depending, of course, if it requires sourcing and contracting. Those are the types of outcomes that I think you and I can continue to encourage our professionals and practitioners to be as clear as you can on of what is that outcome. Sometimes that's circular, where they need to get into the right kind of a room to get some of the ideas to then go, oh, that's possible. Now let's see what we can do to address it. And then as a secondary item, who might we go work with to go do that? And I think that good people just working with good people can make a world of difference. So I think that's, if there was a preview, Joel, I think it would elaborate or double click on that spirit.
I like it. And I couldn't agree more, right? Like, and like those, it's why I always say like that, knowing what the best solution is not a useful conversation, right? It's like, what is the best solution in our context for the strategy that we are, pursuing, right? And the objectives that we have. And then, if you want to look at that through a quadrant, then there's like 27 quadrants for different industries and different contexts and all of that, right? So I couldn't agree more. And you might have like cultural perspectives, that there are considerations that are important. Maybe it's a language, maybe it's physical proximity that's going to unlock value, right? And so the software is only part of the equation in that partnership with the software vendor. Like there's, and potentially an SI, right? So there's all of those things to consider in your technology strategy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Which it needs to be secondary to, why are we here? What outcome are we after? Make sure that we can keep our eye on the forest for the trees.
Yep, that's
So
great.
yeah, I'm excited. Looking forward to seeing you there and another 60 people, our newest, closest friends. Jill, thank you so much. Thanks for continuing to show up every single week. I know you show up with a newsletter. I show up with one of
The
these.
show.
And let's just keep showing up, keep helping people, and we will see you all again soon. This has been another edition of, a special edition of, The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. See you next week.
Thanks for having me.